Okay, we're live. Okay, Carson, you ready to do this?
Yep.
Okay. We're on. People are watching us. Can everybody hear us okay?
We're live?
Yeah, we're live. I think everybody can hear us okay. We got the cube in the background. We got a nice little graphic. Where is it? Right there. Pretty cool. People can send in their questions on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, we've also got this posted on the website as well. So hopefully everybody can hear us okay. Carson, what did you think about Thursday night? It was probably a lot of what we expected in terms of the final outcome, but the way that Oklahoma State got there, just what were your biggest takeaways?
Well, we had to start with Taylor Cornelius, don't we? I mean, I was not impressed one iota. I'm right on the edge of saying he stunk. I mean, which is crazy to say when he threw for nearly 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. But let's be honest, Kyle, he missed some very, very easy throws, and it was more than just missing throws. Kyle, he looked tentative. His throwing motion looked shot putty. I was not impressed at all. Before the game, Kyle, I told you that they should not play Drew Brown. They should not play Spencer Sanders to preserve one of those 4 games for redshirt. After watching Taylor Cornelius, I'm less concerned about that. I think one of those 2 guys is going to have to play. Again, this is Missouri State. This is an FCS school. And look, everyone is probably going to chime in and say, oh, it's 1 game. He didn't play that bad. I didn't think he looked good at all. I thought he was tentative. I thought he was shaky. It was not what I wanted to see out of Taylor Cornelius. I thought he made a couple, like maybe 2 good throws. The one over the middle for a first down and the touchdown pass he threw to Jalen McCleskey, I thought were good balls. Other than that, he missed some wide open reads, wide open throws. I thought he was shaky. What do you think?
Yeah, he wasn't what I thought he would be, and I think the problem is Mike Gundy's been preaching all along, well, he hasn't been preaching this, but the presumption is that the things he brings to the table are leadership, being a calming presence, not turning the ball over. And these are things that you look at it and it's like he probably should have had 2 interceptions in the first half. He didn't really look that calm in the pocket. He looked kind of jumpy. And then after the game, Mike Gundy is basically like, well, just trust me. Like, it'll get better. And I'm like, well, maybe. That certainly could be the case. Like, I think it's really hard to just judge a guy on one game. The problem is you only have 12 of them. You only have 13 of them, whatever it is. So you only have so long to figure it out. I don't know. I think next week's game is actually kind of an important game for him. I really do. And
Yeah.
that sounds crazy because it's South Alabama and, whatever. But I don't know. I thought it was fascinating that they played Keandre Woodsey last night. You called it on the podcast. You said this is what you thought could happen and maybe would happen. And then Gundy, I don't know if you saw this in his postgame, he said, well, it's too complicated to explain why we played Woodsey. And I was like, well, maybe. I don't think it is, though. I think it's pretty straightforward. You want to be able to save a red shirt, and he said this. He's like, we don't know what we're doing week to week in terms of the quarterback situation. That's not to say I think they're continuing to start Cornelius, but in terms of the backup, it's going to fluctuate a lot. And I don't know. I think the next 2 weeks are going to be pretty interesting all of a sudden.
Well, and Gundy was asked about it after the game by Dave Hunziker, why they didn't play Drew Brown. And he said it's based on practice, it's based on reps. He said coming into this game they did not plan on playing him. But if I'm Mike Gundy, I'm getting Drew Brown more reps with the ones to, A, see what you have with Drew Brown with the ones, and B, light a fire under Taylor Cornelius. Like, look, you can't play like that. Like, I know his numbers ended up fine, but it was a shaky performance against a bad opponent. I know it's his first game. I get that. But, I thought Barry Trammell wrote a really good column. Where's this Cornelius guy that everyone is just, overly confident in? People that were commenting on your blog saying he's got a better arm than Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph doesn't miss that throw to Jalen McCleskey deep that he overthrew him by 5 yards. So let's pump the brakes on throwing Mason Rudolph out the window for Taylor Cornelius. Like, that proved to be a ridiculous take. But Kyle, more than anything, once he missed some of those easy throws, they didn't ask him to do a whole lot. It was mostly dump-offs, short passes at the line of scrimmage. And again, I was filming the game, so I wasn't able to watch the secondary and the receivers. How many times, Kyle, I lost count. How many times did Cornelius drop back and kind of look around, nothing's there, and just kind of take off just to get out of the pocket? You mean to tell me the receivers weren't getting open against Missouri State? I don't think so. I think he was not either A, not making the right read, or B, just getting a little jittery in the pocket. And you notice, Kyle, they took Justice out early, which we'll get to him, but the starting receivers played well into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
It's clear that Gundy was realizing they were having major issues with the quarterback and the receivers, and they left both of them in for a long time. So I didn't think it looked very good at all.
Well, thankfully we have, I said this to Bill Haston a couple of weeks ago on our podcast, thankfully we have like a decade's worth of history that Gundy always chooses the right quarterback to start the year. So, yeah.
Well, we know this about Mike. He loves loyalty. He loves quarterbacks that stick around, that do all the right things, never say a word, love their mama, all that good stuff. And I get it. It sounds like Cornelius is a great guy, but again, this is Missouri State, Kyle, in a stadium that wasn't full. I mean, you can't have a more advantageous first game as you're at the Division I level, like as a starter for Taylor Cornelius, and he looked nervous. Imagine, again, he didn't look good. Fine, we'll see how he looks against South Alabama, but he needs a shorter leash come Boise State. If he plays like this against Boise State, some of those dropped interceptions are going the other way for 6. So that's kind of where I stand with it. I thought he was very shaky. I thought you were pretty easy on him, actually. I read your 10 thoughts when I got home.
I was.
Seemed like you just pumped the brakes entirely. You put it in park almost on the corn dog.
The clutch was on. Yeah, I get hesitant to kind of bury a guy after one game. I mean,
sure.
We've seen this before with other guys to where, okay, you didn't play great game one. You get that out of the way. Maybe I think next week against South Alabama, I think it's a big deal for him. I really do, because you got the first game out of the way. You've got Boise coming up, and you've got this South Alabama game in the middle that it's like I don't know if you have something to prove, but you certainly have some work to do if you're Taylor Cornelius. But I don't know, man. I get the sense just in watching his interviews. I have not personally talked to him. Kyle Boone has talked to him. Marshall Scott has talked to him from our team. He doesn't seem like an alpha, and I don't think you have to be an alpha to be a great quarterback in college football or the NFL. But he doesn't have to be a great quote. Mason Rudolph wasn't a great quote, but Mason Rudolph was an alpha. Like he was always the guy. Like when he was in a room with all these other guys, he stood out as like that's the dude, that's the quarterback. And Cornelius doesn't come off like that, and it sort of translates to the way he plays a little bit. He seems tentative, hesitant. He doesn't seem like he's going out there and making these QB1 decisions like somebody who's more of an alpha would. And I think personality does not always correlate to the way you play football or sports in general, but I think it might in this case, and I'm interested to see how that plays out and if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, you want your quarterback to be the guy and take command, but you also want him to be able to make a throw from one hash mark to the other and not land it 10 yards short of the receiver.
Yeah, that was bad.
Attitude can only get you so far. I mean, what I want, like, you keep talking about the South Alabama game, and I agree with you. Like, if it gets to the point where they're not confident in him making certain throws, then that's when you really got to look at somebody else, because at that point it's affecting the offense. Like, he's not going to be Mason Rudolph. He's not going to be, a Baker Mayfield type. That's not in his personality. But you don't have to be. With the weapons he has around him, he just has to deliver the football. I mean, they have so many receivers, so many running backs, which, again, we'll get to. I don't need him to be running around screaming at everybody. I need him to deliver the football, and I need him to not shot put it. I need to see a little bit just more command, I guess, is what you're getting at with the offense. And again, I'm like you. I don't want to just bench him after one game. But again, coming into this season, I was very intrigued by Drew Brown. I would like to see him. Now, again, I would like I still have that 4 games in my mind too. But again, Kyle, my mind is totally shifted after one game. I'm not ready to bench Cornelius, but my mindset is shifted on the 4 games for Drew Brown. I'm not worried about 4 games hardly as much as I was before. I'm worried about this season and who the quarterback's going to be, because that was not an assuring performance by Taylor Cornelius.
Why is it Drew Brown over Spencer Sanders?
That's a good point. I mean, we all kind of expected Spencer to be at the forefront, didn't we? I think it comes to, I don't know, Kyle. As you mentioned, Gundy has not made the most sterling decisions with quarterbacks. I think it's experience. I think they trust him more because he's a senior. He's played at the Division I level. I think it comes down to trust. They both got in really late, Kyle. I think we tend to underestimate that. Maybe that's the reason Cornelius was without a doubt the guy. He was just so far ahead of the other two. But I think Drew Brown is a pretty good quarterback based on what I've seen or what I've heard. So I think that's why he's ahead. What do you think? And more than anything, Kyle, they might just want to just redshirt Spencer Sanders since he is the future.
Yeah, again, I think Gundy bases these things on experience, right? I mean, I think that's why we saw Alex Cade in 2010. That's why we see Taylor Cornelius. I mean, and not to say that is always the wrong way to base things, but I think he values that as much, not necessarily experience, but just having been in a system or a program or played at this level for a long time. I think he sort of went into the season ranking the quarterbacks on the depth chart based on how well they knew the system and the program. So Cornelius 1, Drew Brown, because he's played college football for 3 years or whatever, 2, and then Sanders, and then, I mean, that doesn't totally add up because Wood T would be ahead of those guys, but in terms of, I think you can put those 3 in a different tier and then rank them by experience or understanding the system. So I think if they went to somebody other than Cornelius, I do agree that it would be Drew Brown. But who knows? We might see them all this year. We've seen years like that before in which we saw 3 or 4 quarterbacks. Those years haven't exactly been good years in Oklahoma State history, but, and this is what I want to talk about next, Oklahoma State is loaded with weapons. I mean, we knew that going into the season, but did that stand out to you on Thursday night as you watched?
I typed into my phone, Kyle. I was trying to take some notes as I watched because I tend to forget things at my old age nowadays, but one of the first things I wrote down Like, obviously, Justice Hill is, I think, going to go down as one of the best running backs in the history of the school. Like, that's how good he is. Obviously, he was incredible. But the first thing I wrote in my phone was J.D. King is a superstar.
Yeah.
Like, that guy is a All-American type running back. Oh, there was a run in the game, Kyle. I can't remember what quarter it was, but you may remember it. He gets a defender just comes bursting through the offensive line, and he's in the backfield. He has J.D. King for a 3 or 4 yard loss, and J.D. King does a jump cut at 230 pounds, whatever he weighs. Does another jump cut at the line of scrimmage, gains like 4 or 5 yards, maybe, and like the audience or the fans at Boone Pickens were like huge ovation because they realized like, whoa, that was an incredible 4 yard gain. Like to even get that was an incredible run. And you don't lose a beat when Justice goes out with J.D. King. That was the first thing I wrote in my phone. I thought he was exceptional. And obviously Justice Hill is what we thought he was, right? I mean, the 92 yard run got everybody out of their seats. I think Dax probably texted him that he got caught from behind. Dax probably said I wouldn't have got caught, but no, the running backs are just loaded to bear.
LD Brown might be really good.
Yeah. Number 7?
And he's
looking like Tatum Bell?
He's like their third or fourth guy. I mean, J.D. King made a catch. This was in the first, or I think it was in the first quarter. He kind of comes out of the backfield, goes over the middle, and it was a ball that Cornelius threw that you're like, oh, that seemed like sort of a throwaway. Like maybe if he catches it, just he was basically throwing it to where the defender couldn't touch it. And J.D. King looked like Jalen McCluskey out there catching it and turning upfield, and you're like, how's this guy? He's built like a fullback, and he runs like a tailback and catches like somebody who can come out. I mean, he's astonishing. He is so good, and they are so loaded at skill possessions. Chuba, what was your reaction whenever Chuba went to the house?
Well, as soon as he caught it, I just said, gone, like Gundy.
Yeah.
But no, I had a good angle at it. He caught it and went down the sideline, and this guy in the secondary was sizing him up. I was like, ooh, he's about to take a big hit. And he just made that like just subtle little maneuver around him and split the two defenders like a guy like Vince Young would do, frankly, where he just kind of ever so slightly just kind of glides past it. That was certain guys look different, and Chuba looks different than most guys as far as pure speed, and just the subtlety of his movements was incredible on that run. But no, that was one of my bigger takeaways, Kyle, was, I mean, how good was Marcus Arroyo at recruiting? Look at the stable. Remember just a few years ago, they had Desmond Rowland, and literally they were turning around at the bench. They had nobody to put in the game at running back.
Yeah.
It had gotten so bad. Now they have legitimately 4 guys who could start in the Big 12. And just go back to that West Virginia game last year, Kyle, where J.D. King was the best player on the field with 36 carries, 140-something yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like he can carry an offense by himself. And that was the cool part about, Justice goes 92 yards, and they try to get him the touchdown, but he's just dead dog tired after that run. And they're like, all right, J.D., get in here.
Yeah.
But that was on the negative side, Kyle. The running backs were so excellent, but this was scary. Against Missouri State, an FCS team, on the goal line, they couldn't block. They had to resort to 2 deception plays. They had to run a reverse to McCluskey because they could not gain 2 or 3 yards to score it. And then they had to run the fullback flat, play action play, which were 2 really good calls, and they worked.
Yeah.
But when you're having to go to that against Missouri State, and they had a couple runs for losses on the goal line. That was concerning for me, the offensive line.
Yeah, I understand, and I think I agree with that. I do think that's sort of who they are. I mean, we've seen this red zone offense over the last 5 years. It's never been that dominant, And so you get into the 8 yard line, the 12 yard line, and you're like, well, I guess we have to. I mean, remember when they ran to score against Central Michigan, they ran Stoner out of the Wildcat back in whenever that was, 15, and you're like, what are you doing? But that's just who they are in the red zone, I think. I guess. I don't know. I do think that if you're saying the offensive line has improved, and I think it has, it seems like you should be able to do more things inside the red zone that are more basic kind of like you're talking about. But I don't know. I had something I was going to say about Chuba, and I can't even remember. He was.
They put him on kickoff, and he caught one deep in the end zone, didn't take it out. I was so disappointed. I wanted to see him just take off.
I know what I was going to say. Somebody, this might have been on Twitter, it might have been on the blog, but somebody said, I'm not that impressed with Chuba. I thought he was going to be faster. He doesn't look like he's running that fast, or something like that. And I was like, that's the point. Like that's how Vince Young looked. That's how these guys that are just elite runners, it just looked easy. And I thought it looked easy for him on Thursday.
I don't know how you say that on the touchdown that he scored. Like,
well, I think it just looks physically like he's not exerting himself. Like he's just glide. He just floats. It's unbelievable.
Same with LD Brown. He turned the corner on that 77-yarder and similar deal. It's gone. He had the angle and boom. So they're just. And I think, Kyle, that can help Cornelius get settled in these next couple games. Obviously, they're going to be able to score. He gets 2 games to really kind of ease into it. But again, Boise State's got a legit defense. What do you think about the receivers, Kyle? Another thing I wrote in my phone on my notes was I really, really, really underestimated Tylan Wallace. I think he's probably going to be the number 1 receiver this year. I thought he looked excellent. He had the fumble, which I didn't think was a fumble. I thought the ground caused it. But he looked like kind of Cornelius' go-to guy there for a while. I know he didn't end up that way, stat-wise, but I kind of underestimated him during the season when it comes to the receivers.
Yeah, I think I said that before the season, Tylan over Tyron. I know that.
No, we'll get to Tyron.
I know that's tough for you to hear, but Tylan's a star. I mean, he's awesome. It was interesting. I think Cornelius targeted McCleskey actually the most, 10 or 11 times. But Tylan was up there. They're loaded there as well. You know, Tylan made that back of the corner of the end zone catch over it didn't count because he landed out of bounds. But you know, Gundy compared him to Josh Stewart. He's kind of more athletic than Josh Stewart, I think. I don't know if he's quite as fast, but he just seems overall more athletic, I feel like. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. I really underestimated him. You mentioned Tyron, Kyle. I looked it up. I told you I was dubious coming into the year. They just don't throw the ball to him. And again, I'm not going to make.
Maybe he's not open.
Well, maybe. Again, I'm not blaming. I'm not blaming everyone but Tyron. I think it's a combination of both. But I think Colton Chelf will end his career with more career catches than Tyron Johnson. Is that a hot take?
That's a great take.
I looked it up. Colton Chelf ended up with 32 catches. Tyron had 18 last year, and he had 2 last night. I don't even remember the second one. I remember 1. I don't remember 2.
He needs 13 in the next 12 games. No, he'll have 40 catches this year. I hope.
Maybe.
I mean, what are you doing if he doesn't? What is he doing? What is anybody doing?
Well, again, I guess McCleskey got deep once. Tylan seemed to be the deep threat. That was kind of missing last night. That's the other concerning thing I had with Cornelius was the offense was not. They weren't asking him to throw deep very much. And I think Tyron that's where he excels. But I'm not going to harp on him every single week like I did last year. Like I was dubious coming into this year they weren't going to throw him the ball, and that's what we're going to see. So.
Yeah, the guy that really impressed me a lot was McCleskey. I think he sort of was the forgotten man coming into the year. Everybody was on Stoner as maybe the guy who would get the most receptions. You know, obviously everybody loves Tyron. Tylan was the young guy, and I feel like Jalen got a little bit forgotten about. He scores 3 touchdowns, scores on the ground. He gets the most targets, most catches, most yards. He was really good on Thursday, and you know, I think part of the thing is his ceiling, I think, is a little bit lower than some of the other guys. Like, he just is who he is, and he's sort of been that for his entire career, which is not a bad thing. He's been super consistent. I think he gets a little bit of a bad rap because of the special team stuff. He wasn't very good on punt returns last year. But I don't know. He stood out to me on Thursday. I think he could be in for a really good. He might be the recipient of, okay, so you got to spread out the Marcel Aitman, James Washington, Chris Lacey catches. Like, those guys are gone. Who do they go to? Maybe it's Jalen. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to kind of work itself out, but I thought he was excellent on Thursday.
Well, what he is a chain mover. He's to me is going to be the guy they throw it to side to side or across the middle to get those key, third down conversions. I think he's going to be the third down guy. Him or Stoner or Tylen, one of those three. But and Stoner did run some deep routes that he just couldn't quite connect with Cornelius. But no, you're right. McCluskey, he is overlooked. He's been there so long, you just kind of take him for granted. But I think you're right. I think the way he played last night leads you to believe it's going to be between him and Tylen, I think, for leading receiver this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Stoner's still up there. I think, again, like we always do this thing. I'm not saying you're doing it, but we all do it. We take the first game, whatever happens, whatever the stats are, and then we just project it for the rest of the year. And it's like, look back at, other first games of the year and things, they just don't play out the way you saw them in the first game. People get hurt, quarterback changes come into play. It's just, it's so easy to do. And I don't know. I think that obviously we need to ease into the Big 12 schedule and see what happens against South Alabama and Boise.
What do you think of the defense?
Calvin Bundage is so OKC Dave wrote this on his survey, the results. So he kind of wrote out I think Bundage got voted favorite player on defense by the most percentage of people that had ever voted for any one player in a single season. And OKC Dave said, Calvin Bundage is I think he said a star. And I was like, in my head, I was like, yeah, he is kind of, but I don't know if he's totally a star. And then Thursday, I mean, he might be a superstar. He is awesome. And I just think that, and I thought this going into the year, and it was a little bit proven true, at least on Thursday, he's just so perfect for this type of defense that Jim Knowles runs. And Gundy said this after the game. He said, Knowles came in and pointed at Calvin Bundage and was like, that's the guy I want going after the quarterback. And it's like, yeah, no kidding. Like, so do we. And I don't know. I love the secondary. I think Tabo and Rodriguez and all those guys, I think they're really good players. I don't know if they're going to be as good as, your Trey Flowers and Ramon Richards in year one, but I just think they're really good ball players. And, obviously the sophomore corners coming back, AJ Green and Rodarius, have more experience. I have a lot of confidence in their defense. Again, this will play out over the next 11 or 12 games, but I thought it was a pretty good showing in game one.
Yeah, I mean, they pitched a shutout for nearly the entire first half. That's what you wanted to see against an inferior team. But I do love that they're just going to send Bundage on one side and Jordan Brailford on the other. Yeah. I think both those guys are poised for just huge seasons, and that's what we want to see, right? We want to see pressure on the quarterback that in turn, provides some cover for your secondary. They don't have to hold their guy for as long. But I'm still a little concerned about the corners, Kyle. There were several balls in which they made plays on, but they were just right on that line of pass interference. Remember how many pass interferences Rodarius and AJ Green got last year? That still concerns me. I want to see more of Rodriguez and Tabo against better teams, obviously. But no, it was a good first showing. They obviously gave up some points late, but again, that's going to happen in a blowout. But no, I liked what I saw. That was good stuff. There wasn't just those third and long conversions that you tend to see, at least in game one. So that was positive. But more than anything, Kyle, I thought the pressure, the speed, and just you go up and down the lineup for OSU's defense. There's a lot of all Big 12 caliber type players on that defense. So Jim Knowles has a lot to work with.
Yeah, he really does. He was fired up too. He's crazy. He might be crazier than Spencer was.
That's saying something.
Yeah, he was insane. I just threw it out there for people to send in some questions if you have them. We did get a few things. One person asked, did CJ Moore play last night? He did not. He was actually, I don't believe he was even suited up. I saw him on the sideline in his jersey, but no shoulder pads on. I don't know. I don't know if he's hurt or if he's getting a red shirt or what, but I don't believe he had pads on last night.
Who is that?
CJ Moore.
Okay, yeah.
Somebody said Cornelius makes Alex Cate look good. I don't think I would go that far, but the point is taken.
Well, I mean, again, Alex Cate didn't make a completion, but it's very similar of a situation, is it not? The guy who's sat on the bench, paid his dues. It's got a lot of those same feelings for me after one game. Again, I'm not saying he's Alex Cate by any means. Alex Cate was awful. Cornelius wasn't awful. He just wasn't very good. But very similar situation as far as biding your time and Gundy rewarding that.
I'm telling you, I don't understand why people trust Gundy when it comes to picking a quarterback. What over the course of his career has he done in terms of selecting a starting quarterback to start the year that engenders trust in his ability to do such a thing?
None.
Yeah.
He's been wrong more he's been right.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, and again, like we've talked about this a million times, some of that's injury, some of that he can't help. Sometimes he did pick the right guy, probably, and then that guy ends up getting injured and another guy comes in and looks as good or better or whatever, and you can't really help that. But I don't know, man. I just, the next couple of weeks, I did write this, and I thought this part was fair. I think the Boise game right now is a lot more interesting from a quarterback perspective than it was 24 hours ago. Because 24 hours ago, I was led to believe that Cornelius, while he might not be a third-round pick, was certainly going to be, I don't know, 80%, 85%, 90% of what Rudolph was bringing you. I don't know that I saw any of that. I mean, there were moments, I guess, but the things that Gundy loved about Rudolph, protects the ball, for sometimes protects the ball, makes good decisions, doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. It's like, the things that seem like they should be strengths for Cornelius just don't seem like they're going to be. And so if that's true, what are you bringing to the table? Are you dynamic enough as a deep ball thrower, as a passer? Is he going to run well enough? I don't know. I'm pretty dubious of it. I was pretty easy on him in the 10 thoughts, but again, South Alabama is a big game.
Well, and just beyond South Alabama, the Boise State game that you mentioned, the urgency is going to be 100 times what it was for Missouri State. Yeah. And I think everyone at the Missouri State game was like, can we see Drew Brown now? Like, can we see what he's got? Because we don't like what we see here. So the urgency is going to be much higher in that. What happens if you open the game with 2 3 and outs and Boise goes down and scores twice and you go 3 and out again? Is he just gonna ride the Taylor Cornelius wave? I guess if it comes to that, then he'll have to make a decision. But I don't know. I was very discouraged with what I saw, and I think the urgency will be through the roof against a team like Boise because they have a legit defense, Kyle. You know, Jake Trotter stopped us and let us know, like, their defense is legit. Yeah. So that's not what you want to see in game one. But again, it's one game. It's an FCS team, but it's just one game.
There is no chance that Justice Hill has 15 or fewer carries against Boise State. Zero. A 0% chance that happens.
Yeah, Gundy is going to make him stay in the game. There's no doubt.
So he said 15 carries a game, which first of all, after the first quarter on Thursday, I was like, did he mean 15 and a half or a quarter? Like, what? But this is what he's going to do. He's going to artificially deflate his number of carries against South Alabama, Missouri State, Kansas, maybe Baylor. And so at the end of the year, his average might be like 15 a game or 18 a game, but he's going to have like 7 games where he carried it 36 times a game or something like that. It's going to be crazy.
Oh, yeah. They're going to have the stationary bike on the sideline, the hyperbaric chamber for his legs, like between series, just because Gundy's going to pound him sure. He's going to.
I want to talk unis, but we saw the Diamond a couple times last night. How excited were you for that?
Oh, it was like seeing an old friend, a long lost friend you hadn't seen in a long time. And you have to do that, right, with all the backs. I loved how they put Justice and JD on the field at the same time, even with Chuba in the Diamond. I loved that. But before we get to unis, Kyle, Their special teams stink still.
Yeah.
So bad.
Well,
Horrible returns. The few returns they do well, they get a flag. They let balls drop and roll inside the 20. It's awful. They missed an extra point. Just they haven't been good on special teams since Joe DeForest left. I know Gundy's the special teams coach. Man, they're bad on special teams.
well,
That was one of my
thankfully they hired a second defensive ends coach instead of a special teams coach in the offseason.
right. So bad. God, doesn't matter who they put back there even.
Because defensive end is really a position that they were struggling.
Right. I think Jim Bob can handle that himself, or Joe Bob.
Jim Bob.
Joe Bob.
That was actually one of our questions was thoughts on special teams, so we answered that one.
Oh,
What let's see here. How'd Jelani look in person? He looked like a beast on TV. I think I gasped out loud in the press box when I saw him. Did you see him line up in the backfield for the first time?
I did, and I was like, he looks like Joel Embiid in pads. But it was so obvious, Kyle, that he was coming in to run a passing route. They don't want him blocking, and sure enough, he went in for one play on a passing situation, and then they took him out for the big bruising Cowboy backs, and then ran the football after that.
Yeah, yeah, he's a monstrosity. Let's see here. Do you think Gundy can use? This is interesting. Do you think Gundy? What am I? I don't know how to use Facebook. Do you think Gundy can use rewarding the loyalty of starting Cornelius as evidence when recruiting to keep people from transferring, or maybe he does it for that reason as well? I think that we start like connecting these dots with things, and it's like it might just like and you said this. I think football coaches just exist in the present, in the current moment, and they're not thinking about all these other things.
As to why they didn't play the two guys?
No, he was talking about like did they start Cornelius like to show like, hey, we reward loyalty here, and that helps in recruiting.
Yeah, I don't think Gundy worries too much about recruiting. They're going to sign who they want to sign and move on down the road. That's been proven. I think it's more than anything, it's what we talked about. Just I don't think they just handed Cornelius a job because he was on campus for 5 years. I think he did know the offense better than the other two guys. I think that's why. He started out so far ahead, like I mentioned. But again, he's going to get his shot. He got it in his first game. We'll see how he does next game. But if he plays like that against Boise, he will not be the quarterback. Or at least the pressure will mount. Like Gundy will get serious questions about it in the press conferences moving forward if Cornelius continues to play like that. For people who just want to say he threw 5 touchdowns and nearly 300 yards, didn't watch the game. It was not an assuring performance at all.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's see here. Does the success of Facebook stinks, by the way.
It's not good.
This is a terrible user experience. Zuckerberg.
Why do they make everything so complicated?
Well, I'm trying to click on see more in the comments, and it won't. I'm so
Dad
old.
probs.
I'm so old. It's so bad. Does the success of the quarterback run of Missouri State concern you later on when playing Kyler Murray in Kansas State?
Sure. I mean, that's one of the harder things to defend in football is when the quarterback can run. It's an extra guy. It's an extra blocker. So sure it does. I mean, that's something that's bothered OSU. It bothers everybody else. It bothers Oklahoma. So yeah, sure. I didn't have a whole lot of concerns about the defense. I'm more concerned with deep balls, coverages, and like in that sense. But sure, it's always a concern.
Yeah, because that's one of the spots where this aggressiveness on defense. You're like, well, what do we? That's sort of like it's something that it's hard to use that against the quarterback run. Like I feel like that just negates everything you're trying to do as an aggressive defense. So I think it's a concern as well, and I'm interested to see how they game plan for that with a Kyler Murray, with even Iowa State likes to run their quarterbacks a lot, Kansas State. I think that's going to be pretty interesting. Okay, last thing, Carson, uniforms. And real quick, your thoughts on the uniforms as well as the video board.
Well, let's start with the video board.
Okay.
It was everything I had heard about and more. It's weird how much I got used to it, which doesn't seem possible. It was so big. I tweeted out a picture, Kyle. They weren't going to turn it on until they did the intro video, which I loved that they did that. The field goal net looked so small compared to the video board. It was jarring to look at. But no, it looked incredible. I thought it really helped with replays. Remember trying to look at those smaller ones on Gallagher for like just to see if Tylan Wallace's foot was down in the past? We would have had no clue inside the stadium. So that was great. And I thought the uniform was great as a new look, a look we hadn't seen. I continue to think the orange pants are the best thing they have in the entire wardrobe. Those just pop along with the jersey. So, yeah, I liked it. Patriot Pete, it's grown on me. I liked it. 2 thumbs up for me.
It was solid. I'm not usually a big fan of the all orange. It looked like something Ricky Fowler would have worn in like 2014. But for whatever reason, the helmet sort of made it work. I don't know if they've gone all orange since they went to the new template. I don't think they have. So yeah, I liked it. I thought it was solid. We all got throttled in the uni predictions, by the way.
Yeah, that's gonna happen. You know, it made me long, Kyle. Like I think Southwell may have brought it up in our Slack chat. It made me long for white, orange on the road. Like how much is that going to pop?
It's going to be awesome.
Oh,
you could go Icy Pete with the. Oh yeah, it'd be incredible.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
That'd be sweet. We'll talk more about uniforms on our podcast at the beginning of next week. But we've been going for 40 minutes, Carson. So we'll call this. And appreciate everybody tuning in. We're going to try to do these either right after the game or maybe day after, depending on travel. We're both traveling to various games and they're in person, so it's hard to do it when we're, working on different things. But we will try to do them for every game this year. And, yeah, keep checking out the website. Carson, it was good to see you on Thursday, and we will talk soon.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, bud. See you.
Yep.